Haoran visiting an old friend's country place. My old friend prepared chicken and millet and invited me to visit his country place. Green trees grow thick beside his village. Blue hills slant beyond the city wall. We open a window to look out on the little square. With our wine, we chat about mulberries and hemp. He tells me I should wait until the double ninth day, then come again to enjoy his chrysanthemums. So we continue with another poem by Haoran. Now, the first thing I'd like to say about this poem is that if I hadn't known who the author was, if I had just found this poem without any authorial reference, I would have instantly have felt, okay, this is a poem by Tao Qian. So this is exactly the type of poetry we associate with Tao Qian. Now, I've talked about Tao Qian before. He was one of the poets of the period of disunion. He lived at the end of the 4th century of the Common Era, and he is famous as the founder of the gardens and fields type of poetry. That is a poetry that describes the natural landscape and the pleasures of the retired life. He was a scholar official who did not want to occupy positions in office, which was quite a smart thing to do in his own time, which was a time of, lots of dynastic change and therefore immense dangers for anybody who was in politics. He led this sort of gentryman scholar retired life, enjoying the pleasures and without fretting too much about the fact that such a life did not perfectly fit with the ideal of the Confucian scholar official. The period of disunion was also a period in which Confucian ideology lost a great part of its stranglehold over Chinese mentality, being complemented, if not pushed out of the picture, by Buddhism and Taoism. So this poem, the topic of this poem is representing the lovely, pleasant, retired life in which two friends that live in a rural setting meet and enjoy those simple pleasures that another farmer could enjoy, eating a simple meal, drinking wine, enjoying the sights. In a lot of these poems, which are written by scholar officials in this style of the retired life, the pleasures of the gentry class, the artistic and cultural pleasures are mentioned, like playing the chin or reading poetry. In this one, we don't get any of that. So, this could be, it's a poem of a scholar official, but if a rich peasant could talk, this is something that a rich peasant could think and want to express with words. So, altogether, a very, very Tao Qian-like poem. It shouldn't surprise us, and Meng Haoran also makes a lot of poems about the retired life, and it's his star topic. But generally, in his poems of the retired life, we get nature, and we get the hermit living in nature. We don't usually get a hermit visiting another one and enjoying simple pleasures in cuisine. Okay, more things about this poem. So the main topic, as I said, is pretty clear. It's the pleasures of the simple life in the countryside. You could say that there's a slight, very minor landscape descriptive element. Some of the couplets or some of the images, not many, describe the landscape as seen from the old friend's country place. Of course, friendship and conviviality and symposiac themes of enjoying poetry and other things together with other scholar officials is present, as it almost always is in Chinese poetry. Remember, poetry was a social activity for the classical Chinese scholar officials, and it was one of the things they did as a group, and it was one of the things that showed them as members of the group. So a lot of Chinese classical poems are interchanges of poems with friends or reflecting these meetings with friends. Okay, as usual, let's go couplet by couplet. So the first couplet introduces the poem, and it complements the title. It specifically expands what is going on in the rest of the poem. My old friend prepared chicken and millet, and invited me to visit his country place. So when you invite somebody to your house, you invite them to eat. Interesting, the foods referenced in this text are very significant. So millet and chicken. Millet is a cereal, and it was, I think we've encountered it before in other poems, it was the main cereal in China, at least until the late Tang Song dynasty. We tend to think that China is a country of rice cultivation, and this is true, but rice cultivation is mainly a southern China thing, which is where the climate, the humidity, the temperature favors intensive rice cultivation. The north of China, as I said, until the Tang and even a bit later, was a cereal area for other types of cereals, mainly different varieties of millet and wheat. So millet would have been the staple food of any peasant, of any person. Chicken, so meat was consumed in very small quantities for most people in ancient China. It was a luxury item for celebrations and feasts, not altogether so similarly as things were in the West. The cheapest meat is chicken. It's always the cheapest to cultivate. So two scholar officials informally have a banquet, or even two rich farmers have a banquet. The meat will be included in the menu, but it will probably be chicken. So it's a banquet to homage Meng Haoran, but it's the simple, rustic type of banquet with millet and chicken. Okay, next couplet. So the next two couplets, as you know, are the parallelistic couplets, and they are the more descriptive ones about the sights and the things that Meng Haoran and his friend are going to do. Second couplet. Green trees grow thick beside his village. Blue hills slant beyond the city wall. So very clear. Green, blue, trees, hills grow slant beside, beyond, village, city. The parallelism is quite clearly seen in the second couplet. So the background is described. The first couplet described, if you will, the social background of this meeting between Meng Haoran and his friend. The second couplet describes the surroundings of the old friend's country place, basically through two elements of the landscape, trees and mountains. So trees grow thickly beside his village, and blue hills slant beyond the city wall. So I find the image a bit confusing. If this old friend is living in a village, what does a city wall or a city have to do with it? Maybe the village is not too far from a city, and so the city wall, the outer city wall of the city can be seen from the village. But anyway, it's just, I imagine here, the presence of city wall is meant to contrast with village. But still, it could be realistic. As I said, maybe the old friend lives in a village which is relatively close, at least at bird's eye view from a town, from a city. Anyway, we get this background of beautiful hills in blue, and beautiful trees in green, surrounding the spaces of human habitation. Third couplet. So in the third couplet, we get the activities that Meng and his friends do. And they're related to sightseeing and enjoying the landscape. We open a window to look out on the little square. With our wine, we chat about mulberries and hemp. So this couplet emphasizes, again, just like the first couplet did, the rustic and the rural nature of the pleasures of Meng and his friend. So they open a window and look out into the landscape. It's a small window, a little square, so they can enjoy the natural beauty. And they drink wine, which is a typical thing scholar officials do when they get together. And they talk. But what do they talk about? One would expect they might talk about philosophy or literature, the things that interest scholar officials. But the topic is pretty rural. Yeah, they talk about mulberries and hemp. Mulberries and hemp were related to clothing. So mulberries were used for making silk. The silkworms ate mulberry leaves. Hemp was also used for making the rougher clothes for the peasants and the common people. So the topic of the conversation of Meng and his friend is nothing philosophical or religious or aesthetic. It's, everyday life. Cultivation, agriculture, the production of the stuffs that generate the clothing or the taxes which rural people pay. So the rustic, the rural tone is really strong in this poem. And finally, the last couplet to conclude thrusts this meeting into the future. He tells me I should wait until the double ninth day, then come again to enjoy his chrysanthemums. Double ninth day is the ninth day of the ninth month. It was an early winter festival, and one of the traditions of that date was drinking wine infused with chrysanthemum flowers, with the idea that chrysanthemum flower wine extended one's life. So, I don't know, there's no seasonal indication in the poem to indicate when it was written, but anyway, a future meeting is proclaimed. A meeting when late autumn, early winter comes around to enjoy chrysanthemum wine. View the chrysanthemums, which are a flower that is appreciated in the East, but also enjoying chrysanthemum wine. That includes the promise or the hope of a long life in which the old friend and men Haoran may, for many years to come, enjoy each other's company. So that's it. Quite a simple poem, but a very nice and simple take on the rustic life. This could be a perfect example of the pastoral genre in Chinese poetry, even more than other poems of this sort that we've encountered before. There is no reference really to scholar official occupations, beliefs, or pleasures, so very good representative of the simple retired life.